tonight. This is going to be an interactive program. Eric's going to give a 15 or 20-minute presentation. Then we're going to do some kind of brainstorming ideas. We want to hear from all of you about what you would like to see in the Great Marsh Park. And then those dots that you all received, you can go around and prioritize what you would like to see in the park from the list that we've generated. So this program runs till 7 o'clock. We do plan to do the whole rotation again later. So we'll have another presentation later for people that come in a little bit later, and we'll run through the whole program again. Just a housekeeping note, there are bathrooms out the back door straight across the hall. And we do have a comment table in the back. We will be leaving comments open until June 10th at 4 p.m. So if somebody couldn't be with you here tonight, you can certainly take comment forms home with you and drop them off at City Hall. I will also have my email address available. If you just wanted to email me any comments or thoughts, that's also welcome. So 4 minutes after 4, I think we can get the program started, and I'm going to turn it over to Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to see so many people here for this. Like I said, or like Janet said, we're going to go through a brief presentation of the history and the ecological evolution, I guess, of the park. The boards you see on your left of the room is a series of exhibits that talk about this history. The last board is a analysis sheet, if you will, that kind of condenses all this information into one. There's also copies of that on the table in the back at a smaller scale that you can have. And there's a second one over here, in case everybody wants to walk around and look at these. I didn't want everybody to be consolidated on one place. So let's get started. Again, my name is Eric Wall. I'm a registered landscape architect. I'm also the current president of the Delaware Native Plant Society. I taught some landscape design courses at Del Tech in Georgetown, and currently I'm a senior landscape architect at Moore & Associates. So the Great Marsh Park, the master plan, like Janet said, we were charged with putting together this master plan. And part of this process is gathering information from all the public on what they want to see in the park. The Great Marsh Park is approximately 66 acres of city leased land owned by the state of Delaware. The property is to be developed as a park to be operated by the city of Lewis. The master plan process will include a number of tasks and public meetings, ensuring a successful outcome that complies with the state and local guidelines. On this first slide, you'll see a yellow outline. That is the 66 acres of the Great Marsh Park. The first step of the master plan process, and perhaps the most important, involves the review of the existing conditions of the land known as the Great Marsh Park. The objective of this task is to recognize the park area, identify potential conflicts, determine the feasibility and suitability of amenities, and begin to analyze the opportunities and constraints of the park area. This meeting and gathering information and analysis is paramount in this process. A conceptual master plan will then be developed in conjunction with public and stakeholder input, and a final master plan will be provided at the end of this process that provides a roadmap for the future of the Great Marsh Park. The intention of the master plan is to establish a comprehensive plan that identifies desired activities and development of the park as required by the land lease agreement. These exhibits will help to identify specific amenities that are most suited for a given area of the park and delineate them on the master plan. The master plan can then be a foundation for future design and planning. The mission of this process is to create a viable, usable, and beneficial park that serves the city of Lewis, as well as others that frequent the city's parks system. Next slide. So, a couple years ago, I was going to give a presentation at the Lewis Library in coordination with the Delaware Native Plant Society on buffers. However, COVID had different plans and it never happened. But I feel that a few slides from that presentation are relevant to this project. So with this slide, you will see the regional context of the Great Marsh Park. This is also on the first exhibit board on the side of the room. The green areas shown are designated as open space on the 2020 Lewis zoning map. Can we go to the next slide, please? Sorry.
There's 2 seats up here for anybody.
So on this slide, I've added the state and designated recreational areas on top of the Lewis zoning map. So all that extra green, you can see Cape Henlopen State Park, the Great Marsh, some other areas. The Great Marsh Park is outlined in red on this slide. Next slide. Oh. This on?
Yep.
Can we go back one? Okay, so on this slide, you'll see the lighter green areas are added. This shows the potential for community-owned open spaces added to the mix and designated natural areas on Sussex County's website. Notice how a green belt or necklace has taken shape around the city of Lewis. This is shown because I wanted people to imagine the potential if we planted our common areas in an ecological manner and what could happen if we did. Next slide. So, a brief history. The next 3 slides will show a progression of the Great Marsh Park through aerial photographs. The area was active farmland since before 1926 on the first slide, and these are also on the exhibit boards on the side of the room. This stayed active farmland up through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Note the hedgerows that can still be seen today. So on the boards and on the slide, you'll see these dark lines here, which represent the hedgerows that were planted along the farm edges. And they're made up mostly of Osage orange, and they're still there. They provide a connection to the site's agrarian past. Next slide. Notable changes occurred in the second half of the 20th century. At one time, a research and industrial campus, as well as residential communities, were planned. Note the delineated road and cul-de-sac that was part of this planned campus. So that's the cul-de-sac that goes back to the dog park right now. However, these plans failed to materialize, and the site is now preserved open space. Next slide. Once the site stopped being farmed, the ecological process of succession began. This helps to understand how the area became forested. If anyone is not familiar with the term succession, it means when, let's say, a farm stops being farmed and just lets nature take its course, and things start to come in by themselves into the farmland. And eventually it wants to strive to be its apex condition, which in this case is a southern mixed pine oak forest. There's also wooded wetlands on the site. Within the last decade, Lewis Unleashed opened its gates to the dog park, centrally located within the park. And you can see how in this image, the central area is now the dog park, near the cul-de-sac road on this park. Next slide. So now I'd like to talk about the existing conditions of the park. You'll see we divided up the park into 4 quadrants, A, B, C, and D. Each quadrant exhibits a unique and special quality, which we will go over in the next few slides. The green arrows you see on the slide represent communities within walking distance of the park and potentially the most representative users of the park. The red arrows shown represent the major roads and thoroughfares at the park, New Road and Park Road. This is important in order to show how some will experience the park as they drive through it, because Park Road actually bisects the park. Next slide. So this is the entrance from New Road. The main access to the Great Marsh Park is via Park Road. A boulevard entrance transitions into a 2-lane road with a multi-use path on the east side. The landscape is comprised of an edge condition that includes many invasive species such as Bradford pear and autumn olive. Next slide. So I say this edge condition, and I want you to understand what that means. So along most of the roads through the park, invasive species such as Bradford pear and autumn olive can be found in the edges. Consideration should be given to move these trees and bushes. The reason why they're along the edges and concentrated there is because the edges get more sunlight. And Bradford pear, as you well know, is easy to spread and easy to identify, especially in the early spring. So this is when I took this picture with the white blooms. Autumn olive is also very easy to spread. And they really provide no value to wildlife, no nutritional value, and they crowd out native species. So that's one of the reasons that we recommend removing, to the extent possible, these invasive species. Next slide. So quadrant A, which is as soon as you come into the park off of New Road to the left, is comprised of mixed pines and oaks and a dense shrub layer, as you can see in the image on the left, including stands of blackberries that are commonly foraged. Existing hedgerows of Osage orange line the once farmed fields, which is a picture on the right. The taller trees behind the front trees are the Osage orange. Other species like American holly, vines like greenbrier, they can all be found in this dense wooded area. Next slide. Quadrant B is, as you further go up Park Road on the left, is comprised of mixed pines and oaks as well. This area has a more diverse plant palette than other areas in the park. Adjacent to the University Research Gardens, this portion of the park offers educational opportunities that could create a synergistic effect with the university. Next slide. Quadrant C is north of the dog park area and includes a community garden. Quadrant C is comprised of mostly tall pines with a sparse understory that is carpeted in pine needles, as you can see in the bottom left picture. This unique space in the park offers a completely different experience compared to other areas. It is in with close proximity to the existing trail, which is the picture on the top right. Opportunities to view the marsh can be found here as well. And when I say this is a very special place, when you're under those pines on the soft bed of pine needles, it's completely different than other parts of the park. And that's why we could capitalize on this space as well, and being so close to the trail. Next slide. So quadrant D, which is to the right as you come in off of Park Road, is comprised of mixed pines and oaks again, along with wooded wetlands. So on the analysis exhibit, there are some areas of light blue that are the wetlands. However, a distinctive feature of this quadrant is the large area of sweet gum trees, which is the pictures shown on the slide. Very vertical, single stems, very compact, densely growing. And again, another completely different experience than other parts of the park. It's almost eerie when you're under there. All right, next slide. So now comes the fun part. What do you want to see in the park? This is a previous survey that was taken 5+ years ago regarding the vision of the Great Marsh Park. And these are the top 7 responses of what people would like to see. Nature walking and trails, hiking, walking trails, paved walking or jogging trails, community gardens, cross-country trails, exercise trails, and picnic pavilions. So with that in mind, has your vision changed? What do you want to see in the Great Marsh Park? Next slide. So this is what's on the 2 boards, one on this side and one on this side. And we're getting to the point where we want to be interactive with you, and we want your responses of what you want to see in the park. If you have any questions, this is an analysis of the park. So basically what I all just presented is kind of condensed on this page. And you also probably have a sheet handy from the back of the room that's on 11 by 17. So with that, we're going to have Janet and Barry and possibly Rodney write down on these sheets what you would like to see at the park. And they're going to be the same thing on both sides here, one on that side and one up front. And then after we conclude our conversation, before you leave, use those little dots you got and put a dot on what you prioritize as number 1, 2, and 3, or you can use all 3 dots on the same thing to make it even more important. And then we're going to take that information, we're going to consolidate it and come up with a concept plan, which will be part of the next public meeting. All right, anybody have any questions?
You have A, what is this part here at the bottom?
That was part of B as well.
As part of
It's
it.
like a transition from A to B.
Okay.
So it's
That
pretty,
whole section is big.
yeah, the whole portion below the farm road is A, and then after that road is B.
This is the part that you're.
Yes, so the box of
This part is.
This here is A. This is the